Cosmic here, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. Today, the patch notes were spicy. We finally have Spirit Blossom information, including an event pass, an exclusive epic tier board, the first of its kind, and the new lab mode, which will be coming out, which, you know, may or may not be hit or miss for some people, but they're just fun casual modes, to enjoy, right? And there's gonna be quests for it. So I'm not going to spend too much time on Spirit Blossom itself. I imagine most people want to just hear feedback on the patch, which again was very positive in my opinion, and what I think are some changes, but I at least want to draw your attention to this for the quick, 2 minutes up front of the video and kind of talk about it. So the new lab, Bestow, they have a great example of this in the video. Basically, a unit dies, random something in your hand gets buffed. So it's going to have these weird, all in the video they showed like a 30-30 Z. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be super fun. I'll probably try it out on like Friday and just have fun with it. But overall, obviously, labs, as you get a quest to do them, just do them. They're fun, they're very quick, and they have a lot of XP that you get out of it. They do talk about these are going to be special quests as well, so make sure you look forward to those. There is going to be a whole UI. It's going to look very flashy. And I almost don't want to spoil it. Like, doing this video, I thought I was going to go through the video, show you what they showed in the YouTube. But just go check it out if you don't want the spoiler. But, I mean, it is beautiful what they've done, and I'm so excited to log in tomorrow. And then kind of the big thing, right? The first of its kind, and no, this is not going to be an every month thing, as some people are already trying to ask about on Reddit. It's a very special event where as certain, I keep using the word event, but as different themes come up, or if they want to try something new, maybe it's going to be quarterly, maybe it's going to be half a year. We don't really know yet. But at least for this first iteration, we have the Spirit Blossom event. And of course, with the event is going to come a event pass, or just battle pass, to use the more commonly known phrase from time to time. But there is a free track and there is a premium. So if you want to go through this whole thing free, you can. Here's kind of like the one quick shot of it. But if you buy the premium, which again is going to be 975 coins or just under $10, there is a ton of value that you're getting out of this, right? So if you think about the Guardians themselves are usually around $6. The emotes are around $2. It's going to add up very, very quickly. And then the card backs, I think, were $6 off the top of my head. Generally speaking, as these always go, if you put in the time and if you get to level, in this case, 28 is the max, you are getting just, double or triple or whatever ends up being value back for what you spent in terms of the cost of the Spirit Blossom pass itself. Now, again, if this theme isn't for you, whatever, right, you don't like it, which is fair, there's still really good stuff to get for free, right? You're still getting free shards. There's a free champion card, which you might say, hey, they're super generous. I'm getting this anyways. Sure, but it's a lot of just extra value and incentive for logging in, kind of as we wait for these, the spoiler season to start up and set 3 to drop a month from tomorrow, right? Or a month from, tomorrow, because that's when patch goes live at the time of recording this. So great, and there's also an FAQ, but again, the thing that I really like is, let's say you're not sure how much time you're going to spend. At least in the video, it looks like you can farm the event, do your best. Obviously, a month comes by. I only get up to, let's say, 20, right? We'll say I didn't get my goal. Is it still worth it for me to buy the pass? You can buy it later and still get all the other stuff. Again, until I can 100% guarantee it in game. It's speculation right now, but that's typically how battle passes work. So I just expect to see the same thing here. It is very, very exciting what they're doing, and like this whole aesthetic is just, I love it. I cannot get enough of the Spirit Blossom style. I need all of these, and absolutely I'm gonna be getting the board as soon as I can. So with that, let's get into the actual patch notes. And I do want to mention up while we're still in the same theme of Spirit Blossom, right? So it goes through August 19th, which is when we expect set 3 to drop. There's the new labs, the new epic quests, all the stuff that I mentioned. And then just as a quick preview before we get into the individual cards, this is the board. I mean, this is just, it's so good. And yes, it is a little bit more expensive at 1290 coins. It's definitely the most expensive that we've seen, other than like the Lee Sin bundle. But the bundle, you're getting multiple things, right? So it's not exactly the same, but it is going to be the first that offers unique reactions to gameplay. So I'm really looking forward to what this means overall. So with that, let's get into the actual patch changes now and talk about what's new for 1.6. Why should I care, right? And I know if you read the thumbnail, Elusives being nerfed, yes, I think there's still going to be play, but it's important to note that 2 very large elusive packages or core decks got nerfed, and I think that alone up front does a lot for the meta. So instead of seeing, 3 to 4 different decks that might have elusives in them, it's going to cut back to 1. maybe 2, right? But it's a significant decrease in representation. And yes, I know elusives can still be frustrating, but I think as long as people are seeing it a lot less, it's not going to sting as much, right? So we'll have to see what that looks like a week from now when we are a little bit more into the meta. So it's important to note here too, there was a dev note from Ruben Zoo up front. It's not always about win rate percent, right? And I talked about this in the Mobalytics data video as well. Sometimes it's just about designs of cards that are pushing out other things. And in this case, it really was both elusive and direct damage from Noxus. So you're going to see a lot of changes to those cards here down below. And I think that's great. Now, to be fair, we haven't had any new cards yet. So this only means that things like Fiora and Shen might come back, right? So old decks that, sure, it's nice to see some kind of change, but it's not necessarily like an entirely new style or anything, right, in that regard. So I'm not saying like Shen Fiora is going to be tier 1 or anything right off the bat, but those are the types of changes and expectations that we should have going into this. So that's kind of the major caveat I want to have up front. This isn't going to change the meta in a significant way in that you're going to see some like brand new deck pop up. It is just going to be iterations of older decks. So if you're like me and have been playing from the start, you're just going to be like, oh, Heimerdinger Lux is back again, sure. But if you're a relatively new player, that is super exciting because now you finally get to see these other archetypes which weren't represented. So yes, there's the meta changing is likely relative to how long you've been playing. And you might argue, well, yeah, it's a mid-range deck for a different mid-range deck, but how much does that really matter in the grand scheme of things? Not a lot if you've been playing a long time. So there is a lot of positive here. I am very excited, but I did want to add that disclaimer up front. So in my opinion, the biggest one is Heimerdinger, right? So gone are the days of Flash of Brilliance into insane turns. I want to say that generally speaking, Fearsome is still fairly strong at what it wants to be doing, but it's obviously not as strong as Elusive. So with the more mid-range meta, if we think about Freljord, which I'm going to talk about a lot in this video, this just gets chump block into oblivion, right? So it's not quite where we'd want it to be in terms of like the damage and the cost and all that stuff, but I don't think Heimer is completely dead like a lot of people are saying, but it definitely got hurt significantly. I definitely think this puts it more in like a healthy, balanced perspective, but it's probably going to take a while before you see Heimerdinger come back. What's interesting to note here is that the Stormlobber went to 4, which is Overwhelm, and I didn't have time to go through all the spells, but I think this is a pretty big pickup, at least in terms of that Overwhelm getting in a good amount of damage where you need it, and then the Floor Be Gone going to 6. So the thing I want to add right here, and I kind of mentioned it, but 6 is a super relevant spell number for the Heimerdinger Lux archetype. The downside that is I'm not quite sure how it's going to match up into Ashe Sejuani, which in my opinion is the biggest winner from these patch notes. So you're playing this very mid-rangey kind of, if you have Heimerdinger, you get extra value off your spells. Obviously, Lux is then going to give you the final spark, which deals more damage, but typically what we've seen is that P and Z spells really don't line up well into Freljord if they're playing the Hearthguard variant deck. So yeah, at least in those early games, you can get up some early board control, but as soon as they drop Hearthguard, it's going to just negate most of your deck. So I think that Heimerdinger Lux can come back, but it's going to look very different from what it did a month ago now. It's been a while since we've seen it, but if you're interested, that's probably one of the first decks that I'll be playing in the new patch just to see how we can make this playable, right? So Heimerdinger taking a huge hit here, but I think there is a potential for the Lux Heimerdinger archetype, but it's going to take some time to come into the meta and actually be decent, right? The next change here is Braum losing a power. I think we can all agree this was very strong. At the same time, I'm really sad to see double nerf. So Anivia's egg got nerfed, which is a lot less to talk about other than yay, it dies the Vile Feast now. I think Braum really did want that 1 power just so it provided such a strong option in Freljord that it's not just going to be, okay, I have Sejuani, I have Ashe, and then I have Anivia maybe if I want to do a more control package, right? Like, Braum has a more awkward role now because you're not getting able to get in that chip damage. Yes, you're still getting the Mighty Poro in this case, which can be really nice, but it is a bit more difficult to work for that, so you're going to be putting in a bit more effort to really get the value out of Braum and make sure that he levels up and, still does what he wants to be doing. Obviously, things like Fury of the North are still going to be very good with him, but overall, a little sad to see this, but we'll have to see what this means for set 3 champions and how Braum is going to stack up then, right? Because if this is too much of a nerf, he's just going to fall back off again and nobody's going to play him. So have to wait and see, but I'm kind of expecting this might get buffed again in set 3. Have to wait and find that out. Egnivia taking a nerf here. So obviously just giving us more options to remove it, but at the same time, if they remove Egnivia already died at this point, so if they have Rekindler, it's not really that big of a nerf. I like it because, you know, obviously there's if they don't have that answer, sure, there's more opportunities for you to get this off the board, especially if we think about me playing Katarina a lot lately. The Blade's Edge suddenly looks very good, but again, it's like they just Rekindler it back, or they have Missed Call. As someone who recently lost to the triple, Missed Call turn, feels really bad. But overall, yes, it's a nerf, but how relevant is it in like the grand scheme of the meta? Not really. If it already got to this point, you probably have the Rekindler and you don't really care that much. Relentless Pursuit. Okay, I know. A lot of people are saying this a nerf, and just strictly by the case of it, sure. Going to fast to slow is a nerf. No one can argue against that. However, and as they call out right here, right, it's often cast as a slow speed. The cute thing that you're doing is like in combat, you cast it, so they only get 1 reaction window. Generally, at least as much as I play this card, if I'm casting Pursuit, I'm just winning. It really doesn't matter if they have 1 or 2 reactions. I already have a pretty well-established board. Maybe I have Jenny that's like putting in work. I'm not too concerned with this being a nerf. I know a lot of people are upset about Demacia in general, but it has been seeing more play recently, so I think this one's not as significant, right, as everybody's making out to be. Arena Bookie. So this is an interesting one. So the entire discard archetype, which I'll wait till we get to the last couple cards to talk about it, got a buff. A very significant buff for cards like Suit Up, which when you want to draw it because then it reduces the cost, right? So it's the discard package as well as the cards that say when you draw this got buffed. So it's really interesting to see how this is going to play off. And maybe TF weirdly got a boost by this as well. But Arena Bookie, right? So this card is meant to be played with Draven because you discard the Spinning Axes and you get to draw more cards. So maybe we see like a TF Draven more aggro deck. I'm not sure that's where it's at. Obviously, I want to give a shout out to the Runeterra devs here because they are buffing cards that saw 0 play, right? So this is not something a lot of other card games do. So I'm not sure that this is enough. I definitely will try it out as an option. Going from 1 health to 2 is definitely pretty significant as well. But we're going to have to see how this matches up to everything else and if the discard archetype even wants this, right? There's a lot of good cards that are forced already into the discard archetype where I'm not sure this even makes the list post buff, but I would say it's worth trying, see how it works. But again, you have to have something like Draven in there because that just makes sure you're generating those axes every turn. Again, the downside there is that then you're forced to cycle those axes every turn unless you have a 1-drop you don't care about. So I think it's doing some interesting stuff and could actually see play, but I'm very medium about overall. Basilisk Rider losing a power here. Fair. It's going to go to 5 with the Allegiance, right? That's still enough to kill Braum, which is kind of like was already the awkward spot for it. So still a very good card, still strong what it wants to be doing. The big thing here is that it's still over 3 HP. So I think this is a very fair balance to this card, right? You hit Allegiance, it dodges a lot of removal. Yes, you can concussive palm it, but 5 damage is still a lot on an overwhelm unit and it is the flavor of Noxus, as it were. So overall, I think this is a very fair balance regard to this, and 5 is still, again, just hitting like a truck on 4. Crimson Disciple and Grenadier. So this is a change that we've seen, or we knew that was coming based on the last patch notes, and losing that point of damage. And I think this also, I want to reflect this with like Solitary Monk that went from 4 power to 3 power. Losing a single, even what it might only be 1 point of damage, that's significant. This is a huge downgrade, and a fair one, right, for the reasons they mentioned up front from wanting to promote deck diversity. This is a very significant buff and I think very welcomed one by a lot of people. When I was playing the Katarina deck, this is something that I've talked about, right? Everyone was playing Crimson Disciple just because it provided too much value, and the damage you got from it really was helping push it over the top in this case. So I really like it. I think this is still a fine spot for both these to be in. And of course, this is still helping you get things like Swain to level up. So is this enough? Hopefully. I mean, it should be. They really can't do much else other than like increasing costs. But I think this is going to definitely push out some of those more Noxus aggressive strategies, which is fine. I think we'll see the rise to some other decks, right? Deck diversity overall will increase, but I know some people, very few people, right, might be upset to see Noxus Allegiance get hit in the end. Flash of Brilliance, this one upsets me, I'll admit, but now we get the Overwhelm turret, right? So I agree that it was probably too much value for the card itself. Now it's going to give you the Overwhelm turret, which is, again, kind of where I mentioned where you'd rather be out of those two. And it still gives you a 6-cost spell for Lux and Heimerdinger. So you get Lux to flip, and you can also get Heimerdinger's better turret, right? The 6/1 elusive. So the thing I want to add here, this is really kind of the biggest pickup for Lux in that particular archetype, because now this means that you can do Flash of Brilliance into single combat, and then you have your way to clear for Lux to flip, right? So it gives you that immediate value of getting her to 6. Now, of course, if they have an answer for it or a disruption, it's not at burst speed. Obviously, that's a negative, but I do like how this matches up a little bit better and not giving your opponent as many priority windows as you had to previously. And that's kind of one of the bigger issues I've had with Heimerdinger and Lux in the past, is that your spells are just kind of clunky, as it were, in terms of how you want to resolve them. Like things like Remembrance, and it even ran Unlicensed, the 5/5 spell that cost 6. I forget the Unlicensed Invention, that card, right? It ran that just so you could play an early 6-cost spell, but I think Flash of Brilliance definitely can still lend itself to that archetype. But overall, I think this is a welcome nerf, sure. But it does upset me a little bit just because, you know, Heimer already got such a massive nerf up front that you're now hitting Flash of Brilliance. That I think that this is just going to push him down a little bit too far than what I'd like. Super, super awesome. And I alluded to this already, but both Dredger and Urchin getting, in my opinion, a very significant buff. So yes, it still goes into that discard package, but you are immediately drawing that one card, which again, for things like Suit Up or Pocket Aces, or just having a lower curve of it in your deck, right? This is the stuff that you want to be doing. Now, yes, Dredger did get a cost increase, but I think that's still fair given the now added value of increasing. So obviously you wouldn't want to use Suit Up on him, but turning Urchin into a 4/4 early on can be pretty good value. So I'm really excited for this. I definitely think somebody out there, Skarzig, I'm looking at you, is going to make a discard archetype list and probably have it out by the end of the week. I'm really looking forward to what people work with like on this particular package, but at least for me, I'm going to take Lee Sin and Heimerdinger Lux into the gauntlet, as it were, or just into ladder and seeing how things go. So this one breaks my heart because it was just such a good value card. Yes, for every Ionia deck, but it was kind of like the epitome of what a control deck wanted, and maybe that's fair. Maybe we have to just hit control decks a little bit, but dropping down to a single power is certainly significant, right? So if you even think about the elusive matchup, so yes, it can still swing into the duo and try to like force that trade or block respectively, but it certainly doesn't feel as good for the other ones that might have either a buff or like Lifeblade is a 2/2. That can be pretty annoying. So it's fair. This card was far too good for too long. But this is another one where I wonder what this looks like sometime in the next set, if it comes back, or if there's just going to be new auto-include Ionia cards. The thing I want to stress here is, like, I am not totally against having just strong auto-include early on, because the card pool is small, right? That's why it is an auto-include. And that's kind of the disclaimer I want to make there. But honestly, I would have been fine with this staying at a 2/2 until the next set we get a deeper card pool and seeing what that means. If they're kind of preemptively doing this, again, I do recognize it was a very good card, then sure. But they definitely wanted to hit elusives, so this naturally is what had to go. Steel Tempest, this one should just be a given, right? We got Concussive Palm. It was very, very weak, and it can only hit attacking enemies. It's a very high cost card that only wants to be in one deck, so sure, solid change all across the board. Yasuo decks weren't playing this. I'm still not sure that they're going to be playing it now, other than like a 1 to 2 of, but nice to see that they're taking into consideration. River Shaper, so this actually goes back to the Fiora and Shen comment I made up earlier, or up front, I should say. This 1 and 2 health increase is super nice. You don't have to worry about Vile Feast anymore. You're still going to be able to get in that strike, and it just helps with those spell-heavy decks. So this is a huge plus. Again, And looking at what that might mean for other archetypes, this really does help us build out the other decks that are just going to be all in synergy. And again, in this case, I think Lee Sin also gets like a medium bump from this, but really it was the Fiora Shen archetype that capitalized on this the most. Will of Ionia, another huge change. So going up to 5, I mean, 4 was already pretty rough depending on the matchup, depending on the curve, what have you. But I mean, 5, oof, it feels like a backbreaker. Obviously, the card is still very strong. It's still going to have very strong tempo plays that you can do with it. I definitely think that it is going to be played at 5, but it hurts, and, well, it is a welcome nerf by, I would imagine, like 99% of the community. So I can't hate it too much. Obviously, I really like playing Ionia for the more control package cards, but I think this is definitely going to help more mid-range strategies come about because that increase is very significant. So I think it's a worthy trade-off here, as it were. Funny enough, we had to hit more elusives, right? So Golden Narwhal is an interesting one. I don't think, and this is a case of where nobody was playing it, so they had to change that, which means they also changed Hunting Fleet. I'm not expecting we see these two cards anymore. It was just kind of, added on, whatever, and it's just something that maybe in the future we'll brew with more, but at least for right now, it's a nice change, but I don't think it's going to have any spot in the meta to be relevant. So the last thing I want to mention here which is really nice, is that there's going to be a bundle in the store that you can buy. So this is going to be Gangplank and Sejuani. And if you look at, there's a Riptide Rex, there's a Tusk Rider, there's a City Breaker back there. Looks like, I assume that these are some of the cards that you're going to be getting in the deck itself. But keeping in mind, if you already own some of these, it's going to be a reduced cost. So it's very expensive if you own very expensive, right? In terms of card games overall, this is dirt cheap. But in terms of what can I spend coins on, this is one of the most expensive things that you can spend coins on, at least at its full value. But if you have Gangplank already or copies of Sejuani, it's going to be a lot cheaper. So we don't have the full deck list right now. I'm going to guess, just if this is something that interests you, like if you like these two champions, you probably just buy it. It's a good enough value. They've been very, very good about how much that they're putting into these packages. So I wouldn't feel too bad about it, but I'd at least hold my full reservation until tomorrow when we can see what this realistically looks like. So that's it, right? That is the patch notes in a nutshell. And now at the very end here, you might be wondering, okay, so what do I play? What's the patch going to look like, right? What am I playing for meta? And this is where it gets back into any variation of Ashe Sejuani is going to be strong. So shout out to Team Leviathan Gaming. This is just our meta snapshot that we do every week. You might see me posting them on Reddit weekly and also, tweeting them all and all that stuff. But honestly, Ashe Sejuani just skyrockets in value, or just fairly or mid-range good stuff in general. So I think that the Sejuani Misfortune deck can also be tweaked a little bit and still be a good pickup. But if you are stuck in Platinum or Diamond or something, and you're saying, hey, what can I climb with? Definitely find this version, or find out which one you like better. So there's the Yeti version, there's the Heavy Challenger version with like the 3/2 first strike that makes your Trifarian Glory Seeker have, not first strike, quick attack. So you get multiple triggers that way. And then there's also the Reckless Trifarian that the 5/4 can't block. And all of them have like a slightly different spell package, but for the most part, 12 or 14 or 15 of the cards are going to be the same. And there's like some tech choices thrown in, right? So take with that as you may, but overall, I think this is the archetype that has gained the most. I think we will see at least a few people trying to play Demacia again, but otherwise, I think there's going to be some big pickups for even Deep, which I don't like. Oop, it's at the bottom, my bad. I don't like Deep overall, but in a meta that's not going to respect the atrocity plays, I definitely could see things like Corvina, which I am super excited to see come back if possible, or Shadow Isles and PNZ Control. That has been a favorite of mine. And then I think Sea Monsters is going to come back because it still has a okay healing, okay atrocity. It's just a very okay deck, right? It's like the bottom of tier 2 that's getting a few pickups thanks to these nerfs, but I'm not super big fan of it, but I know people will be excited to try it out. Again, I would say that instead of this, go more towards the Shadow Isles and PNZ Control. So that's it. We'll definitely be going to have another team Leviathan Gaming meta snapshot coming up next week for you. So I'm going to be grinding out. I'm going to be getting back into Master's Ladder myself, just trying out different decks. Again, I'm going to start with Lee Sin and Heimerdinger Lux, just to see how those really have changed in the current meta. But I'm expecting this to be a very, very solid week for Legends under Runeterra. So with that, I'm out of here. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe for future Legends of Runeterra content if you want to see either the deck profile for the Lee Sin or Lux decks that I'll be covering. But other than that, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.